The story of this anime begins in a cell. Our protagonist wakes up a little dazed, but when she tries to move, she discovers that she is chained. Yes, definitely a bad start. When analyzing her situation, she understands that she was imprisoned by the barbarians. Then, we are shown how she got to this point. The year 1342, the year of the dragon, on the eastern continent, in the territory of the barbarians. Both armies transformed the region into a true battlefield. Knights and barbarians faced each other with swords and maces. Our protagonist's army had infantry troops, but their shots didn't even tickle the barbarians' armor. Therefore, the vice captain ordered them to continue shooting. However, within a few seconds, everyone was defeated. With the obvious disadvantage, he informed the situation to the protagonist, who ordered them to remain calm, reminding them of their position as knights of the eastern expedition. Defeated the enemies in front of him, Eildorin ordered to advance from the center and right in semicircular formation to repel the barbarians and create an opportunity for retreat. Finally, he reminded everyone that they were the army of the kingdom of Eildorin and that she was their captain, Seraphine of La Villain. The moment she said that, 4 barbarians advanced against her, but the protagonist brandished her sword and, with a single movement, eliminated the 4. A brief moment to analyze the situation. She realized that they had already lost many soldiers, and that, if they continued to suffer casualties, the chances of retreat would be almost nil, which would mark the end after 7 years of the first Eastern expedition. Just when the withdrawal was already being considered, in the midst of the troops, she heard screams and, in the distance, saw a barbarian making his way between his men. Seraphine was astonished, but soon the two were face to face. The barbarian approached and demanded a duel. Knowing that he could not ignore someone with so much power, she accepted and asked the vice captain to tell her brother that she gave her life for her country. Thus, the protagonist advanced against the barbarian and, jumping, began the fight. Both exchanged blows until, in a moment, the barbarian pushed her with all his strength, throwing her away. Seraphine returned to the fight and another clash of swords began. As time passed, she was cornered. Suddenly, Seraphine began to pray, asking for Princess Vistaricia's favor. At that moment, her sword began to shine, and gathering all her power, she delivered the decisive attack. In the next second, the blade of her sword was thrown away. Everyone around was dumbfounded. Without strength, Seraphine fell to the ground as she heard the barbarian praise her for resisting so long. At this, she tried to get up to continue fighting, but the barbarian stopped her. Smiling in a macabre way, he said that he would make her his. Upon hearing these words, the Seraphine's face changed drastically. Still, the barbarian reassured her, saying that she would not be in danger as long as he had ideas on how to use her body. We then return to the present, remembering that this is now a war spoiler. She wonders if she will be forced to work in the fields like cattle, or perhaps tortured to extract information. This doesn't worry her so much, but when remembering his last words, a shiver runs through his entire body, imagining what they can do to her. Because of this, he begins to struggle on the floor, saying that a single noblewoman like her cannot live such humiliation. At that moment, she remembers her soldiers and wonders if they were still fighting for her, but she soon discards this possibility, since the time they gained was not enough to an organized retreat. Even if the rear guard had managed to escape, the front line would have been scattered. Hopeless, she assumes everyone is dead or enslaved. Thinking about it, concludes that this is not even the worst, because without control in the east, the territory of the barbarians, the people of the capital, will weaken. Frustrated at not being able to fulfill her duty as a noble, she begins to cry. Moment, she hears a woman's voice. When she looks, she sees her jailer. She introduces herself as Circe, servant of the man who captured her. Seraphine watches her carefully and assumes that she came to extract information for means of torture. Circe wonders what she is talking about, and the commander demands that she not pretend, as she brought instruments of torture. However, Circe responds that she has only one order, to ensure that she, the war trophy, be presentable and to your master's liking. Then, pull its chains and lift it by force so that it cannot resist. Seraphine already imagined the worst torture, but no matter what happens, she won't say anything. Then we see the barbarian captain who can't wait to see his great trophy. Seraphine appears completely wet and panting. Circe comments that she has already finished cleaning her. Once again, the blonde asks what she thinks she is doing. Circe responds that, of course, she is removing the blood and the dirt because she was filthy. He also says that he heard that Seraphine faced her master and, therefore, he expected a rougher woman, but in the end, he thought she was quite feminine. Angry, Seraphine thinks they are making fun of her and responds that she is a knight and doesn't need to be feminine. Circe retorts that it doesn't matter, whether it is or not. The only relevant fact is that she caught the attention of your lord faced with this. Seraphine asks what this means. Cersei replies that there is no point in knowing, as she will never be able to get out of there. Hearing this scares the commander, and upon seeing her pick up a knife, she becomes convinced that he really came to torture her. Cersei takes tweezers and approaches slowly. Seraphine closes her eyes so as not to see what they are going to do to her. However, instead, they remove their chains, cut her nails, put a bow in her hair, and change her clothes. Confused, she wonders if they won't torture her to extract information. They even put perfume on her, something that apparently pleases Cersei. Even so, Seraphine still doesn't understand what she is being prepared for. When finished, Cersei says that now she should be presentable. Seraphine begins to think that that is some kind of strange barbarian ritual for prisoners. But at that moment, a shrill sound echoes around the place. Seraphine asks if that was thunder, but Cersei replies that it was thunder. Scream belongs to a single person. Soon after, the captain of the barbarians appears going down to the cell. Upon entering, he comments with, "Surprise how much Crystal Hoof has changed." He remembers that during the battle, they didn't have the opportunity to introduce themselves correctly, so they decide to do it now. He introduces himself as Bo, heir to the great Chief Udin, the One-Eye, owner of a booming voice. Now that they aren't fighting, Seraphine notices how big he is, plus his golden eyes don't look human. At that moment, she believes she finally understands what he intends to do. She remembers when her grandfather told her about the Oriental expedition 20 years ago. At the time, it seemed like a fairy tale, but now she realizes that everything was real. Apparently, barbarians rip out the hearts of their prisoners, and, for her, the proof of this are those inhuman eyes. Even so, she presents herself with firmness. She is a descendant of the Velan Marquises of the Kingdom of Hildorim, youngest, daughter of her former Lord Matitos, and commander of the first squadron of the Eastern Expedition. Seraphine de Lavillantes declares that does not desire any kind of pity and that they can sacrifice or use her as they wish. They are both surprised to hear this. B, the confused one, asks what sacrifice she is talking about, and then clarifies that he brought her there to make her his wife. This makes Seraphine blush immediately. She screams for them to stop deceiving her, as she knows he just wants to. Make her let her guard down so he can use her in some way strange ritual. B insists that it's not that, but Seraphine doesn't believe it, remembering that they are enemies. To this, he explains that perhaps she doesn't know the customs of the West, but in her lands it is different. For generations, her family has had a tradition of marrying female knights. Still, Seraphine makes it clear that she will not fall for their lies. This doesn't seem to matter to B, who remembers that she herself said they could do anything to her, and in fact, she said that. He then reassures her, explaining that he didn't make this decision just out of tradition, but because it really became impressed with his skill. In other words, it was love at first sight. These words make Seraphine blush even more, leaving her without reaction. Beor calms her down, assuring her that he doesn't intend force her to do nothing. After saying that, he leaves, leaving Seraphine completely confused, and rightly so. The story then goes back 7 years in the past, in the kingdom of Eildoran, in territory governed by her family. Her brother, Sidios de la Villante, informs the protagonist about the expedition. Without hesitation, she accepts the position of captain, promising to fulfill her mission and bring glory to her family's name. Before leaving, his brother gives him a letter from Ildal's court, inviting her to a banquet. Despite her doubts, Seraphine ends up accepting due to his insistence. In another scene, in the suburbs of the capital, people watch the announcement of the expedition that seeks volunteers. Upon seeing the payment offered, some get excited while others discard the idea as they consider the mission too dangerous. At that moment, the Lavillanti family carriage arrives and everyone they lower their heads when they see her passing. At the mansion, Seraphine gets out of the carriage while some comment that they did not expect her visit. During the party, they comment that the war has made food more expensive, although for some, this also brings benefits. They also talk about Seraphine leading the army as a woman, highlighting that, despite this, she is one of the strongest in the order. They also say that it is common for members of the Lavilland family become commanders, but they question the fact that a woman holds that position. Tired of hearing these comments, Seraphine moves away for air, but some ladies come to her to keep her company. They ask if it is true that she will be the commander of the Eastern Expedition, commenting that that region is full of violent and unknown creatures, as well as supposed dragons and monsters. Seraphine responds that this is nothing more than fantasy, although she recognizes that it will be extremely dangerous to face the barbarians, comparing them to animals in human form who kidnap female knights to sacrifice them, further stating that this is not a place for a woman. Tired of always hearing the same thing, Seraphine knocks on the table and responds that the kingdom of Eildoran seeks conquer the east from its origins, and that, for her, as a member of the nobility, it is an honor to be sent to fight for the peace of the people. One of the women comments that she should leave that to the men, because she doesn't see the point in a woman fighting. She also mentions that even Princess Westeresia, whom Serafini admired so much, ended up disappearing on the battlefield, and that as a woman the greatest honor would be to get married and stay at home. This deeply irritates Seraphine, but she controls herself not to attack them and decides to leave. Inside the carriage, she reflects on how the people at the party they had fun with music, while in the streets the people were starving. At that moment, she hears someone asking for help. As she approaches, she sees a group about to attack a defenseless man and intervenes to stop the attack. She warns them that if they resist, they will lose their lives. But upon taking a closer look at their weapons, she realizes that they are peasants. One of them recognizes her as a noble because of her sword, while the other encourages them to attack. Even so, Serafini defeats them with ease, but avoids seriously injuring them. Then, she asks if this is the first time they have resorted to that. One of them responds that they had no choice, as they were dying of hunger, and that she would understand. Serafini recognizes that they are right, so she rips off her necklace and offers it to them, demanding only that they promise never to steal again. They accept, gratefully, swearing that they will never steal again. Do this, and that they will use the money to feed their families. As they leave, Serafini asks them to resist a little longer, as she will soon conquer the East. Everyone will be able to live better. Finally, the day arrives to leave for the battlefield. Before going, she appears in a room full of paintings, where she swears to fight with all her strength for the people and the kingdom, asking the Princess Wisteresia that protects her. At that moment, her brother enters and asks if she didn't find a suitor at the party. Serafini doesn't understand the question, as she is about to leave, but he interrupts her, stating that, like other women, her desire to be a commander is nothing more than a selfish whim. He says that she has grown up enough and should get married while she still can, adding that wielding a sword does not change this fact. The scene then mixes, and the image of her brother begins to transform into that of the barbarian who asks her to become his wife. Confused, Serafini does not understand which is happening until she finally awakens. She wonders why she dreamed about the barbarian until she hears snoring, then sees the barbarian sleeping next to her. However, something else has also awakened. Veyor, not knowing how much an oriental warrior usually eats, serves him a quarter of the meat. Serafina is impressed by the size of the portion, but misinterprets his attitude, thinking he wants to hurt her. Her pride with luxuries, saying that she would rather starve than be pampered by a barbarian. However, her stomach growls and she ends up asking again to be killed. Veyor replies that if her stomach's snoring, it's because her body still wants to live and she shouldn't be fooled like that. Furthermore, not eating would be disrespecting the life that was taken for that food, explaining that killing is not for fun and asking, with a smile, that she eat. As Serafina still resists, Veyor says that prey was prepared especially to receive her. She mentions that on the day they brought her, he went hunting to offer a great banquet. He also says that due to his skill, he would be considered noble in the West, and there, due to his ancestry, he would be like a prince. Therefore, he asks Serafina, as a noble, don't refuse food out of politeness. So, she finally agrees to eat. Serafina tastes the meat without much expectation, but when she bites into it, she is enchanted by the soft and juicy flavor. Eat something. So it would be a luxury, even for royalty. Eudoran Veyor, kind, asks her if she liked it, and she replies that she can't complain, although she still doesn't want to get married. Curious, Serafina asks, what animal is meat? Veyor responds that she hunted in the mountain, and that she can see it through the window, thinking about taming the creature in her land. Serafina goes to look, but comes across a dragon. Yes, a dragon. She is completely shaken and asks if they really ate that. Veyor calmly responds yes. For Serafina, this is absurd, since dragons are considered legendary creatures that they breathe fire and have poisonous meat. Veyor explains that there are two types, and that, in fact, they are like a plague. Even so, Serafina continues eating. After all, the meat is delicious. Veyor laughs, and Serafina notes that she cleaned her plate, concluding that she doesn't intend to die anytime soon. Later, Veyor suggests taking her to the mountain to show her something, but Serafina still doesn't trust him, since she's trapped. 2 days ago, she says it doesn't make sense to go out to a place full of strange creatures. Veyor responds that common sense varies from place to place. Veyor, not knowing how much an oriental warrior usually eats, serves him a quarter of the meat. Serafina is impressed by the size of the portion, but misinterprets his attitude, thinking he wants to hurt her. Her pride with luxuries, saying that she would rather starve than be pampered by a barbarian. However, her stomach growls and she ends up asking again to be killed. Vior replies that if her stomach's snoring, it's because her body still wants to live and she shouldn't be fooled like that. Furthermore, not eating would be disrespecting the life that was taken for that food, explaining that killing is not for fun and asking, with a smile, that she eat. As Seraphina still resists, Veor says that that prey was prepared especially to receive her. She mentions that on the day they brought her, he went hunting to offer a great banquet. He also says that due to his skill, he would be considered noble in the West, and there, due to his ancestry, he would be like a prince. Therefore, he asks Seraphina, as a noble, don't refuse food out of politeness. So, she finally agrees to eat. Seraphina tastes the meat without much expectation, but when she bites into it, she is enchanted by the soft and juicy flavor. Eat something. So it would be a luxury, even for royalty. Eudoran Veor, kind, asks her if she liked it, and she replies that she can't complain, although she still doesn't want to get married. Curious, Seraphina asks, what animal is meat? Veor responds that she hunted in the mountain, and that she can see it through the window, thinking about taming the creature in her land. Seraphina goes to look, but comes across a dragon. Yes, a dragon. She is completely shaken and asks if they really ate that. Veor calmly responds yes. For Seraphina, this is absurd, since dragons are considered legendary creatures that they breathe fire and have poisonous meat. Veor explains that there are two types, and that, in fact, they are like a plague. Even so, Seraphina continues eating. After all, the meat is delicious. Veor laughs, and Seraphina notes that she cleaned her plate, concluding that she doesn't intend to die anytime soon. Later, Veor suggests taking her to the mountain to show her something, but Seraphina still doesn't trust him, since she's trapped. 2 days ago, she says it doesn't make sense to go out to a place full of strange creatures. Veor responds that common sense varies from place to place, because the creatures and cultures influence this, and asks if she is afraid. With that, he ends up convincing Seraphina, although she makes it clear that she still doesn't trust them. Even so, Veor comments that the what she will see will please her, and as they leave, Seraphina is amazed to see such a colorful landscape. View asks if something happened. The protagonist replies no, she just didn't imagine that the nature was so abundant in that place. Therefore, Veor asks them to continue walking. On the way, they see a wide variety of animals, including a dragon. Veor mentions that dragons are just one of the many inhabitants of the region, but as long as they don't get close to their nests, they don't cause any problems. So they continue walking until Seraphina hears a strange sound. Destination, she discovers that it is a waterfall. Viu asks if that is not common in the West. Seraphina denies it, even though she knows she isn't being completely sincere. Seeing her expression, Veor makes it clear that he is not trying to show off. He just wanted to show that landscape. Then he asks Seraphina to take off her clothes. She refuses, questioning the reason. Viu replies that it is simple. In the water, there is only one thing to do: take a bath. This irritates Seraphina as she was imagining something else. Still, she questions the fact that there are mixed baths. Veor says that it is part of the customs faced with this. Seraphina shouts that she does not intend to follow such barbaric customs, which, let's face it, is not so surprising coming from barbarians. While arguing with Veor, Cersei approaches the protagonist and comments that she is starting to smell bad. Embarrassed, Seraphina ends up agreeing to take a bath with Cersei, although she keeps Veor away. During the bath, Seraphina comments to Cersei that she is probably there to watch her. Cersei does not deny it, but says that it is also to protect her from the creatures of that place. At that moment, a monster appears and roars at the protagonist Cersei. She reassures, saying that the creatures there are quite docile. Still, Seraphina doesn't feel safe with those monsters around and runs away. However, due to imprudence, he ends up leaving without clothes. As she thinks about whether she should go back to get dressed, she hears a man's voice. Scared, she sees a supposed barbarian approaching. However, it was Veor, clean-shaven, completely unrecognizable, and appearing much younger. Seraphina does not recognize him and believes he is someone else. He explains that he walked away because he saw beasts at the waterfall and comments that her mother was a Western warrior, which makes Seraphina suspect a possible connection with an ancient expedition. While they talk, Seraphina begins to feel sick because of the cold. Worried, Veor covers her and even carries her in his arms. This makes her extremely nervous, as she has never been so close to a man. At that moment, Cersei appears and reveals that she has not realized that it was Veor himself. He apologizes for not having dressed up sooner and admits that he likes her innocence. Embarrassed, Serafini hits him, remembering that she is a maiden. Still, Veyor is not angry. On the contrary, it pleases him even more. At the end, he comments that he now knows the woman he loves better. Serafini forgives him, but asks him not to repeat something like that. He accepts happily, calling her his wife, which irritates her, although deep down she admits that he looks much better without a beard. Well, if you've made it this far, comment on the word beard to show that you watched until the end.